You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, my name is Anthony Leveritz, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and today we have a really special guest, John Olinger, former college and professional basketball player, executive with Nike, and now an entrepreneur, speaker, and soon-to-be author, going to release his first book, Worthy Wins, is here today to join us to talk about his journey, his life through sports, what he's doing now. And I think he's got so much to add to this conversation that we've been having. Super excited to have him on the show. John, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Anthony. So good to see you, man, and reconnect after knowing each other for a lot of years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So remind me, what year did you graduate from high school?
2001.
2001. So you graduated the year I left to go to Japan. So I did. That's right. So let's start at the beginning. So obviously a very decorated high school player, but how old were you when you started playing sports? What was kind of the beginning of that journey for you?
Yeah, great question. I started playing basketball probably in second grade, but I really was doing a couple different sports. I was doing baseball, I was doing track, I was doing swimming, I did a season of soccer, but I was really most gifted as a kid as a runner. And so from 8 to 12, I was an All-American cross-country runner. I think three out of those 4 years maybe in there, and really enjoyed it. And it was just something that I was built like a runner. I was fast. I had great endurance, and it was something that I really enjoyed. I played basketball too, and I did other things, but running was my first love.
And when did you continue doing all of those through like junior high, high school? Did you run track and cross country in high school as well, or were you just basketball once you got to high school?
No, my journey changed because I didn't realize it as I was going through it, but my running was so tied to my mom. My mom was super involved in my running and involved in the track club I was in and all that. And she unfortunately passed away when I was 11. She had breast cancer. And it was as if I just lost my love of running. And really, like, anybody who's a runner would tell you, you're just punishing yourself every time you have to go out. Like, and so
my son has that shirt. Actually, it says he's a track guy too. My sport is your sport's punishment.
Yes. And so, it's all hindsight now, but like, basically I stopped enjoying the punishment of running, even though I was still good at it. And I actually found like my solace in basketball. And for whatever reason, that was just like my safe haven. And at that time, where I grew up, Salem, Oregon, the hoop had just opened. And from basically like 6 months after my mom died, for the next like 4 or 5 years, almost every day after school, I'd go to this place called the Hoop and just be there for 3, 4, 5 hours until my dad came back and picked me up in the evening. And so basketball was something that I just enjoyed. But the only problem was, and you knew this because you knew me, shortly after that time, I was a basketball player trapped in a runner's body. and so I stopped running, but I was still looked like a runner. I still had bird legs like a runner. I still weighed, I probably was like 120 pounds soaking wet starting my freshman year of high school. But it was the sport that I loved. And it was what, like, again, met me as one of the ways that I dealt with the trauma of my life during that season. So it became something I just dedicated to. And ultimately, I ended up making the freshman team. But if you were to go back and ask Rodney Howard, who was our freshman coach, he would just tell you, I was a nice kid. And that ultimately was like my ticket in as the last player selected on my freshman high school team.
Pays to be nice is what you're saying.
I worked hard too, but yeah, I was nice, and he knew I wasn't going to cause a fuss, and so he kept me, and that ended up being a really monumental thing for me in my life.
Yeah. So you go through, and obviously you don't stay the last player on your team all the way through high school. I remember watching you play, and the range that you could shoot from, and the way that you competed, and all those things were a big part of your life, and probably got some of that from running, right? Like just that grit and that fortitude that comes from not giving in. Um, you going through high school, wanted to be a Division I college basketball player, right? That's the
Yep.
dream. That's
Yep.
everybody's dream. You don't wake up one day saying, I want to be a D3 basketball player. I don't know very many people that do that. It at some point in time, you start getting recruited. What age were you when you first started besides people like me at Willamette University at the time? What was when you really started getting recruited by some of those schools that you were interested in?
Well, you probably don't remember it as well because you probably just hoped I would have come to Willamette University, just like Gordy would have hoped
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
you know, I played JV my junior year. I
Yeah.
swung. I played in like 2 meaningful games my junior year of high school on varsity. The rest of the
Yeah.
year, I was sitting on the bench and playing JV, and was really like pivotal moment of my life. Of I was on the verge of quitting, and I just kept going, and so like my real recruitment didn't come until like the end of my senior year, which is so not
Yeah. It's
normal.
late. Yeah. It's
It's
late.
not usual. It's not typical. And there were some D2s in the mix, but there's no D1s until I had a really great state tournament. I led the state tournament in scoring my senior year, and just had a really great performance, and that ultimately is what opened the door for me to go ultimately play my first year at Portland State. And but none of that would have been possible, right, if I would have quit before when I was thinking about quitting, and it
Yeah.
wasn't looking good. The D1 dream wasn't looking good. I just kept going and going. But I told you, like, I spent multiple hours a day, day after day after day at the hoop. And it was almost like that payoff for me of all that work didn't come until the very end of my senior year. And so that was when it all changed. They started recruiting me, and I had a choice to make. Did I really want to go play D1 and walk on? Or did I want to go play somewhere else?
Yeah, and I think that lesson is really important for parents out there listening. Kids de- all, all develop at different paces, right? Like there's some that they're in the 8th grade, and you just know that they're an athlete.
Mm,
You don't know what the level's going to
yep.
be, but right? And there's it just takes longer for kids. But if you see your kid having a passion for something, even if they're not the best player in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade, being able to foster that like your dad did for you, and giving you the opportunity to go to the
Mhm.
hoop for 5-6 hours a day to be your babysitter, um, is a it's a great thing for that kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't know what the outcome would be. But as I think about my kids now, now that I'm raising kids of my own, I want to foster environments for them to go just pursue the things that they love, and
Yeah.
commit to the grind. And now, right? Like, I would say, like, hey, just because you don't end up playing, if I never would have played, like, let's say that didn't work out, because going into my senior year, there was still another guy in front of me. Like, at the end of my junior year, there was a point guard in front of me on my high school team. But before my senior year, he transferred, and the coach basically said, "All right, here's the keys, man. Good luck." And it worked out well for me. But
Yeah.
say that didn't happen and I just kept going, I would have at that point said, "Okay, how do I go get involved in basketball at a school?" Like, I had a choice. Like, do I want to play at Portland State? But I got into USC in Southern California as a student, and I could have tried to walk on. But let's say basketball wasn't in the mix, I could have said, "Hey, I want to go get involved in the program at USC and be a
Yeah.
manager, or be a
Yeah.
coach, or be an assistant, or whatever." And that all would have been founded upon the work that I'd put in. So those long hours are not for naught, so to speak.
Yeah.
They were totally worth it, and it worked out for me. But quitting would have totally changed it. Like, that's where in my head it's like, man, I just want kids to give it a chance, and you don't control the outcome, but you do control the inputs you put into your journey.
Well, and I think, you ultimately ended up playing for Gordy James, as you just mentioned his name. And one of the most impactful people I've ever met in my entire
Mhm.
life on me. And he always said this, and now I've stolen it from him, and I'm sure he stole it from somebody else. But that basketball or whatever sport you're playing, is the best classroom for life that you
Yeah.
ever have the opportunity to be a part of. And being able to take that work, right? That process of
Yeah.
like, it's work. Like sometimes opportunities disguised in this ugly package that looks like hard work.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to work hard to get to where you want to go. And sometimes the answer is you're just not good enough, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just not good enough to get there, but that doesn't change that you've learned how to work hard.
100%.
Yeah.
And the reality was, I was still a runner. I still am a runner's trapped in a basketball player trapped in a runner's body. Like that's the reality of my life.
Yeah.
I went to Portland State and that was great. And the reality was I wasn't going to grow any taller. I could only put so much muscle on my runner's body, and that's okay. So I was never going to make it to the NBA, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. It
It's
is
okay. As
okay.
much as I would have loved to play in the NBA, it would have been amazing. Some
Yeah.
people just don't have the
No.
tools, man.
Yeah, me either. So you end up leaving Portland State and going to a junior college for 1 year, I believe was
Yep.
right. And then ultimately you end up at a D3 school, Willamette University, and have an incredible career there. What for kids out there, parents out there that kid may not be a Division I athlete. What was that experience like for you, and kind of how that shaped you? And I know you were able to get your master's degree while you were there. Like you just had a remarkable journey while you were there. What was that like for you? And would you change anything about that experience, or now that you look back on it, was it a great thing for you?
No, it was a great thing for me. I mean, the reality was me going to the junior college was me trying to give Division I another shot. Like
Yeah.
the coach that had recruited me to Portland State ended up resigning, and I decided I wanted to try another route. And the reality was at the junior college, I got mono. I had a really bad ankle injury, and I lost all the stamina, all the strength, all the stuff I had. And so I came to the end of that year, and had to make a choice. Was I going to go back to a junior college to try to give Division one more chance? Or was I going to say, hey, Coach James at Willamette and even you recruited me at that point to come to
I
Southern
did.
Oregon. Like they want me to come be a part of their program. And it wouldn't have been a waste to go back for another year, but academically I was already done with my associates at that
Yeah.
point. Like it wasn't worth it versus me saying, hey, I can go to Willamette. I can get a great education. I have the chance to play while I still work on my master's degree when I'm done. Uh, to me, it was a natural transition to say, I love basketball. Basketball is still a part of my life, but it's not going to be the thing. Like I didn't have any guarantees to keep going at Division I level. And I was like totally comfortable to move on and say, this is the life I want. And my education really matters. And ultimately the education I got at Willamette is what allowed me to get cause at D3, they're not paying for your school, but
Right.
my education at Willamette is what allowed me to score really well in the entrance exam to the business school. So then I got my business school paid for because of the education and the learning I had gotten at Willamette around writing and whatnot. And so, for me, it ended up being a really great choice, and I'm super, super grateful for the time I had with Coach James at Willamette University, getting my MBA. It was really, really special.
And I think what you just said is so important for people out there listening to is I get asked all the time, what advice do you give as we're going through the recruiting process? And what I would tell people is like, don't get caught up in the D and the 1, 2, or 3, or the NAIA, or what is that? What's the level? Find the right fit for you, both fit for you academically and as a person first, and then the basketball level is part of that, right? Like, and who wants you, who's going to invest in
Mhm.
you, who's going to be the right person to help you take that next step to becoming the adult that you want to become. It's about finding that right fit so
Yeah.
that you get all the things out of the experience that you should.
Yeah, 100%. And the reality is that right fit is different for every person.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go along, but like what really matters to a person is different also. Like for me, while I could have maybe transferred to another D1 and walked on or done something and never got in, like I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And for some people, they don't care much about playing. They're fine. They want to go be at a big program and go through all the things that come through that. And there's literally nothing wrong with that if that's what they ultimately care about and what they want their college experience to have been. For me, I didn't want to choose a school that I could just go sit on the bench at. I wanted to go play and have fun, and like I enjoyed playing. And so that
Yeah.
was really important for me in that process to choose a place where I could actually play. And I knew that I would have a great chance to contribute and have a great career.
Yeah. And you did. And then, you get a chance after college. I already mentioned you got your MBA, but you get a chance to go play overseas and do some travel basketball with the Athletes in Action. And then
Yep.
one that I had not heard of. What was the name of was it Coventry?
Yeah, yeah. So I played
Yeah.
in I played in the England basketball league, Division One. It was an amazing experience. The team was called the Coventry Crusaders, and I was one of the two American imports, and
Yeah.
got to have an awesome 2 years living over in the UK. Made some lifelong friends. Um, Played some okay basketball, and felt really grateful because there's so many people who would die to have that experience, to get to go play basketball internationally.
Yeah.
And for me, it was really special, and honestly, in my own story, so I went on a traveling tour with Athletes in Action, and like after I guess I'd been done with my MBA for a year and a half. I had surgery. Actually, my assistant coach from Willamette, Coach Wally Wing, came to my house after I'd had surgery, and he's like, "Hey, have you thought about still playing?" And this was I've been done playing for a year at this point, and I was like, I mean, I'm open to it, but what does that even look like?" And he's like, "Well, I'll sponsor you to go with Athletes in Action this summer." And I was like, "All right." So he gave me a little bit of money towards my trip. I had to fundraise other funds, and I went with them to Israel, and had an amazing experience that we won't go too deep in today. But basically, we traveled Israel by day, and at night we played games in the West Bank. So like in
Wow.
terms of like, I still have these vivid memories of like guards with AK-47s, and crowds banging the drum, and it's the sweltering hot gym. It was amazing. So I did that. Came back, went on another tour with Athletes in Action for another 8 weeks or so, playing teams in the preseason. And then I had like 6 weeks of money left. And after those 6 weeks, I was going to have to get a non-playing real job, if nothing happened. And so I was like, all right, God, if you're going to open a door for me to go play somewhere, um, that's what it's going to take, because there's lots of guys who want to go play ball overseas.
Yep.
And a week before my money was out, I got a call from a team in England whose point guard had gotten hurt, and they needed a guy to come fill out the rest of the season for them. And so that's sort of how that process went. But it wasn't because there's plenty of guys who are better than me who never made it. And I just felt really grateful for the chance to get to go over there and have that experience.
That's awesome, man. There's so much cool stuff that comes from playing abroad. I got a chance to go over and play in Japan, and just
Mm-hmm.
the development that happens it's not just the NBA where you get paid to play. And there's nothing better than getting a paycheck with your name on it for playing
Yep.
basketball. Like that
Yes.
I'll never forget the first one that I got. I should have taken a picture of it and framed it. A kid from Bandon, Oregon, getting a paycheck to play the game that I love, that I would play for free. I got a paycheck
Right.
to play.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing. So you get done playing and transition into corporate America, right? You're a
Yep.
young guy, super talented, got an MBA. Did you start with Nike right away, or was there a transition period between getting done playing and your time at Nike?
Yeah, I came back, and before, because I wasn't planning on playing, right? So during my MBA, I was networking like crazy, doing all these informational meetings at Nike, thinking that was where I wanted to go. And then I went to go play. It's like, hey, sorry, I'll be back sometime, a couple years from now.
Yeah.
And during my time in England, I'd gotten to be involved a lot in youth sports over there and teaching basketball to kids, and it was really special. And so I came back thinking like, man, I want to figure out how I can do that within Nike. And so I started knocking on doors again, but I had to take an interim job in the meantime. So I worked at the United Way. I had done a project with them when I was finishing my MBA. A guy named Dick Withnell, who's a big figure in the Salem community, had hired me on to help do this thing, and then they ultimately hired me on to launch a service there. So I led a project there for like 15 months that was really special. It's called 211. It's a service for people in need. It still exists today. Um, but all that time, I was like having discussions with people at Nike, and there was one job in particular. The Olympics were about to come in England, And the people at Nike were like, "Oh my gosh, we see this. This is a perfect fit. You just play ball in England. The Olympics are coming to England. Like, we're gonna bring you on to come there." And they're like, we'll follow up in a couple months. 3 months go by, 6 months goes by, year goes by. I'm just every month or two, hey, still out there? Yeah, it's coming, it's coming. And then we
Thanks in the mail.
finally, yes, then we get to 14 months, and they're like, "Hey, sorry, we hired somebody else."
Oh man.
And there were lots of reasons, but I get it now that I spent the time working there. It wasn't anything against me. It was just there's lots of stuff happening in corporate settings. And so I came to a crux there where the United Way was saying, "Hey, we want you to stay and become the executive director of our chapter, but you have to commit 5 years
Yeah.
to us." And okay. And at the same time, a friend of mine had just gotten a promotion at Nike out of being the first social media person for Nike basketball. So this is right at the time where like social media is taking off, and he's like, "Hey, do you want my job?" And I'm like, "Okay." But I had to apply and go through all that. But like I had this like crossroads of my life. Am I gonna spend the next 5 years as a medium-sized fish in a smaller pond of a community? Or do I really want to go after a career at Nike, but start as a tiny fish in a
Yeah.
giant pond at
Yeah.
the bottom of the totem pole? And so I did this thing with some friends of mine. My friends Chad and Kent hosted what was called a clearness committee. And they brought 8 of my friends together, put me in the center of the circle, and sat me down for an evening. And they just pinged questions at me to try to help me get clear about what was most important to me. And when the dust settled from the night, I was like, man, I as much as I love the idea of what the United Way is doing, I don't want to spend my next 5 years doing what that job would require, which was
Yeah.
basically going and asking people for money every day. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I said, even though Nike wasn't guaranteed, what do I really want to do? I want to give Nike a shot. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna go for Nike. They offered me the job. I said, if in 2 years they don't see the value in me and I haven't moved up, then I'll reevaluate and go do something else. But ultimately, I got hired on to be the second person running social media for Nike basketball, and was a really awesome start to my career there.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable, man. And I think that grit that you developed, this is where, just being involved in athletics, right? Like, because hard things are going to come up in your life. And it's such a safe place as a young person to learn how to get through hard things. And they're not really hard, but it's hard for athletics. But it does give you that experience of digging in and making decisions and being able to see a dream and a goal and working towards that. I just think it's such, I'll say it again, it's just such a great classroom for all the things that you are going to need to learn as an adult in whatever it is. It's a mom, a parent, a dad, in your job. It's just a great classroom.
Yeah, and it's I think that any of the greatest athletes that we've ever seen, and this is we'll talk some about people I
Yeah.
worked with, but Kobe, I spent 3 years working as the global brand director for Kobe, and the thing about Kobe that is really well, it's not unique, but what I realized that all amazing athletes share in the process that he modeled was patience. And he had he was not he was actually urgent, and he was very urgent, like, "Hey, let's do it now." But he also had this extreme patience about what it took to get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And there was no shortcut, there was no way to get there. And so as I look back on my journey, all those times of waiting for the good stuff to happen and putting in the work, and it didn't mean I always got the good stuff, right? Like it didn't
Yeah.
mean like I didn't get to go play at another D1 school. There was plenty of things that didn't go my way. I didn't get to start in a better job at Nike. I I started at the bottom.
Right.
But all those experiences with sports taught me that same patience about it just takes time for some of the best things to come to life, and you just have to do the work and you have to show up, and there's literally no shortcut. There's no way to get to the top of that mountain without doing the work day after day after day.
Yeah, so you just answered my question for me. I was just going to ask you what advice you'd give to young people going through both, athletics and then once they get done with athletics, getting into their career field. And patience and hard work are
Yeah.
those things that you have to have. And if you can put those two things together, you're probably in a pretty good space.
Yeah, and that's all you can add. Like, I don't know. It's also interesting, right? As I think about now being in my 40s and looking back, like I love basketball, so that's why I put my time, energy, and attention into that. Could I have been a better runner or a better soccer player? Maybe. I was built a lot more like those things, but I loved basketball, and so that's why I was willing to do the hard work. And
Yeah,
a lot of the great ones will say, the people that ultimately like are willing to do the work are the people that love it, because you do have to suffer some. You
yeah,
do have to go through that process of just grinding. And if you shortcut the work, like it sounds like I'm cliche just saying like this generation,
yeah,
but like we live in a digital world where everything comes instantaneously.
yeah.
You can find like we didn't have that growing up, and
No,
it's a good microcosm. Like the willingness to wait for the good stuff is so hard in our culture that is driven by immediacy and getting what you want immediately. But if you want to be great, there's literally no shortcut. It just takes time.
grind.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And it's one of the things miss most about coaching. I miss
Mm,
relationships with kids and all that stuff, but I loved the grind, right? And
mm,
I think finding something as a parent to put your kid in that teaches them that grind, puts them in that a little bit, that there's a process to get to where you want to go. Learning how to be comfortable in that grind, work hard through it, be patient through it. I think it's incredible advice for young people and for parents trying to guide their young person through that process.
yeah, and the outcome may not be
That's
what
right.
you hoped it would be. Like my nephew actually just went through that process of high school, and he sort of had the opposite experience of me. He put in all the time, all the effort, all the stuff, and he didn't get the reward at the end of the his senior year in the way that he would have hoped. And in the moment, that's really painful.
Yep.
But I have no doubt that the lessons he learned and the things he took and the way that's going to serve him in his life are going to be so monumental compared to somebody who just gave up uh, after their freshman year of like, oh well, I'm never going to amount to
Yeah.
anything. Like he learned the grind,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
and
it,
that's
it's
that's
it's
the
a great
reward.
lesson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get to Nike
Yep.
and have a path along the way. I really want to hear kind of I think listeners fascinating to kind of hear the business of sport. And you were the global brand director for Kobe. Is that the correct title?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Nailed it.
So my brain, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So the global brand director for Kobe. What is a day in the life of doing that? Like that's and I know we could probably spend weeks having that conversation, but that's first of all, it's an unbelievable title, unbelievable job, pressure, like all the things that go with that. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was really special and an honor. If I'm really honest, it wasn't the job I was planning on.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm so glad that it is the job I ended up with. So when I had interviewed, I went from being the social media person for Nike basketball to leading North America digital brand for the Jordan brand. Then I moved into a global digital brand role for Jordan brand, and then I jumped back over to Nike basketball in this role where I was doing innovation, brand work, and Kobe. But at the time, I was interviewing to be the brand director for Giannis or for Paul George or for Kyrie. That's what was on my thing, and it wasn't until 6 weeks after I'd interviewed where they came back and said, "Actually, you know what? We want you to do the role with Kobe." And again, because I had been thinking about the other roles, it wasn't on my mind. It wasn't what I was planning on, but it ended up being this huge blessing. And the reality is, with somebody like Kobe, you're dealing with an icon who has seen it all, done it all. At that point, he had just retired, and so a lot of time was trying to figure out how do we align with where Kobe's going in his life after basketball. Because it's no longer, hey, we're just going to tell a heroic basketball story.
Right.
It's trying to figure out, what is he investing his life into, and how do we come alongside him and amplify that to serve both his brand and our brand. And the reality was, he was injecting his life into the next generation of athletes, primarily, young girls, helping
Yeah, what
them.
he did for women's basketball,
Yeah,
like, just his name associated with that at that time was remarkable.
yeah. And so we were just trying to figure out, how do we support and partner and bring those things to life. We still had new shoes that were coming out that we had to market. We launched the series that's now known as the Protro. So it's basically his own, like he would, he made up a term. It was called Protro. It stood for professional retro. He was like, hey, I'm not retroing anything. The only way we're bringing shoes back out is we make them better and make them modern. That we
I
actually
love it.
have the most up-to-date innovation in them. We're not just retroing. Other people retro.
Yeah.
I protro. So we brought that to life in the midst of that time. And yeah, trying to keep up with somebody like him, who always was forward thinking, was our biggest challenge in the midst of all the things we had going on.
Did you spend any time with Sabrina during that period of time, or was there any overlap between what you did with Sabrina Enescu and as she kind of developed that relationship with Kobe, or was that something, being an Oregon guy and my daughter at the time fully immersed in women's basketball and having been immersed in it myself? Any crossover there with her?
No, it was almost like parallel paths. So I sat at the global level, and the team at the North America level would have a little bit more interaction of those two things coming together. Typically, the global team doesn't touch anything NCAA related. It's one of
Mm,
those swim lane things, but
yeah.
same window, same season of life, of trying to figure out how to amplify what he was doing for women's basketball, as he was sort of growing and building that relationship with her.
Yeah. I was it was just super cool, and I'm a girl dad and then coached women's basketball before, and I'm a huge proponent, obviously, of opportunity for everybody, but it's so great to see the growth of the women's game, and what brands like that have done to promote women in sport, and the opportunities that now exist that didn't exist before are pretty remarkable for young women, and should have never been that way, the other way, but it's great to see it coming around to having equal opportunity and equal time.
For sure. And I think that their relationship probably, she did the work on the court and performed, but there was, um I don't know her personally, never met her personally, so I don't know for sure, but I'm sure there's some wisdom that was gleaned about what it looked like to partner with a brand. And so, as she when NIL wasn't a thing when she was in
Right.
college. So when she was finally finishing college, I played a small part on the team that was building her pitch and plan for how we wanted to use her. And I have no doubt that her forward thinking, or level of expertise, all that stuff came, with a dose of Kobe's influence, and sort of guiding and allowing her to think about things in a unique way that somebody without that relationship or exposure wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, you just said NIL wasn't available at that time. It wasn't legally available at that time. I swam
You were the
around in
college
those.
coach, man, so
I
I'll just
I
leave it to
swam
you.
around in those murky waters, man. It was. I'm very glad that everything is now on the up and up, and everybody has a level playing field, for those who wanted to run a clean program versus those who didn't. The opportunity for young people to all have a seat at that table, opportunity wise, I think it's made the sport much better. They need some
Agreed.
guardrails around it, but that's a whole different conversation. So you make a really difficult choice to leave Nike, right? Like,
Yep.
and up and move across the country. And what led you to that decision? To go out on your own and do your own thing, and then we'll dive into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But what led you to that decision?
Yeah, I'll try to give you the shortish version, but the reality was, Nike changed a lot um over the 10 years that I was there. And, our world changed a lot too, right? Like,
Yeah.
COVID happening in 2020 disrupted and changed a lot of things as well. And so Nike shut down, the campus shut down in 2020, like most places did. And then Nike went through a reorg, and I was still leading Kobe's work at that time. You know, this was shortly after the accident with him and Gianna and the others in the accident. And so I had the huge blessing and opportunity to get to be the one helping steward what the company was going to do to respond, of how we're going to honor his legacy. And so I tell you that because I talked about it earlier, right? The thing that he was investing in was the next generation of athletes. And so the thing that we ultimately stewarded was all around passing Mamba mentality on to the next generation, which was great. And so over the first 6 months of COVID, I did that. And then that felt like a mountaintop moment for me. Like
Yeah.
that's why I came to Nike. I came to be involved in and tell those kind of stories that were going to impact the next generation of athletes and change their trajectory in the same way that probably part of the reason why I believed that I could be a great basketball player, even though I had chicken legs and weighed 120 pounds soaking wet, was because of these stories that Nike told about athletes that I wanted
Yeah.
to be like, that I could see myself becoming. And so the work with Kobe was a huge part of doing that very thing. And so when that project came to an end and Nike was reorging, my wife and I were talking, and she was like, "Well, what happens if Nike cuts you in the reorg? Like, how are you going to feel? Do you want to move?" Like, her family was back east, so what do you think about moving back east? And we talked about that a few times, but eventually, I'd always say, "Oh, I'm working on this project or thing," and we never talked about it. But in this moment, as I just finished this mountaintop project, and as Nike might cut me any moment, um, I was like, "Hey, I'm open to moving." And so for us, um, we started praying, and we said we were going to pray for 40 days and see how God might show up in those 40 days of prayer. And she had asked me, like, "Well, are you scared of leaving Nike?" And I said, "No." She said, "What are you scared of leaving?" And I said, "I'm scared of leaving my dad." And my dad was in Oregon. And so we started praying, and unfortunately, 5 days in to praying, totally unexpected, my dad had a freak accident. Ended up in the ICU with a traumatic brain injury. And we were saying, "Hey, well, that was not how we saw these 40 days going, but
Yeah.
we'll keep praying and see what might come to life in the result." And so I'm praying, we're praying. My dad's still in the hospital. All that's happening, and we get to day 40, and Nike says, "Hey, you have a job," and they say, "Your job is to be the global brand director for men's running." It's a great job. Lots of people would want that job. Um, and I said, "Okay, well, do I get to like have a team under me that I'm directly leading?" And they're like, "Well, you'll like indirectly lead people, but you're not going to have anybody that directly reports to you." And well, some people might say, great. For me, what I had been telling the leaders at Nike for the previous 2 years was, "Hey, I want to spend more time investing in people and less time leading these big projects." Like, I could lead the projects like the Kobe project, but I really wanted to help people learn all the things that I did not learn in my journey at Nike that I had to figure out for myself. At Nike, most times they just throw you in the deep end and you have to figure it out. And that's where the grit and the determination and all the things of like I survived. I made it through, and
Yeah.
I had a great career. But nobody taught me anything. Like, they're like, "Oh, you have this thing due." Okay, well, how do I do it? Figure it out. And so they say you can be the global men's brand director for running. And I said, "Okay," even though it wasn't what I wanted. And my wife and I talked that night, and she's like, "Well, what do you think God said in 40 days?" And I said, I feel like he said, "You can choose. It's up to you. Like, I trust you." And Nike's offer wasn't, "Hey, you can take a different job." It was, "You can have this job, or you can accept a package and find a different job elsewhere." And because my dad was still in the hospital, I said, "All right, well, I'm going to take this job. I'm going to do the best I can, and then we'll see what happens with my dad." And so about 20 days later, my dad passed away. His body and his brain just could not get on the same page. And so when the dust settled, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I think we got to go move and be near your family. Like, life is too short, and we don't know how much time we have, and they want to be in the mix with our kids." And I knew as a result of making that choice, that would probably mean the end of my time at Nike. But I worked remotely for like another 18 months or so.
And then decided like I'm gonna go do my own thing,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
like
I
it's
mean,
scary, man.
I just thought I would get another job, man. I thought, if anybody who was back in working in that period of time, like, is it gonna be remote work forever? Like, what's gonna happen? And where we were moving wasn't a place where there was like booming um, business or anything. So, like, if it was gonna happen for me, I was gonna have to work remotely. And so we move. I'm applying for jobs, and either it's not a fit for me, it's not a fit for them. And then I have I get through the process with Disney, and so Disney's like 2 hours from where we live, and I get through the process for Disney, I have an offer from them, and the job was really worded in a way where it seemed like you could live anywhere. They're like, "Live in New York, live in Florida, it's fine," and when they slide the proverbial offer across the table, they're like, "Hey, just so you know, this job is 3 days a week in the office,
Mm,
and you're signing to commit to be in the office 3 days a week. We'll be flexible, but you gotta be there 3 days a week." And I'm like, all right, I need the weekend because at the same time, Nike's saying, hey, you got to come back to Oregon. And that clock is ticking. There's like 3 weeks left before they're like, hey, you need to be in the office in Oregon. And so when I asked my wife, I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she's like, well, do you really want that job? And I was like, no, I don't want that job, but I need a job. And I like, we got bills, we got kids, we got
yeah.
like, they're offering it to me. And she's like, well, if you don't really want that job, why would you take it? I'm like, you're right. And the reality was I didn't move we didn't move to Florida to be near my wife's parents so that I could commute 4 hours a day or live in Orlando 3 days a week.
Right.
We didn't want that. That's
Yeah.
not the life I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I turned it down, and that was the day where I realized if we were gonna live where we lived and keep going in the sort of trajectory we're on, I had to step out and be a consultant. And God had sort of dropped these breadcrumbs along my journey over the previous couple months of like, but they were breadcrumbs, man. They were not, they were like, it was $1,000 here. Like it was not a meal. It was like, this is just a taste of what it could be, but it gave me enough confidence to say I could see that consulting could work for me. But I was stepping out into the unknown, but it was better for me than taking a job where I was gonna have to commute 4 hours a day or have to like fly back and forth to Oregon, every week.
Yeah, again, like facing some fear, right? Facing like a new challenge, and just listening to your story. When we talked a couple times before this episode, just you can feel the journey through hoops and all the things that it prepares you for. And it's amazing when I talk to successful business people who are athletes, how many of them have not, obviously your story is unique in kind of everything that you've been through, but the same idea that path prepared them. I had no idea they were being prepared for what you're going through right now when you're 14,
Yep.
15, 16, 22 years old. But it really does prepare you for what comes next.
Yeah. It doesn't I think when you commit to the journey of going for something and doing the hard work, it allows you to just say, "Hey, I'm gonna go through it, through the ups and downs. I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna realize that I control what I control, and I don't control anything else. I don't
Yeah.
control what Nike does. I don't control what the coaches did back in the day. You just go prepare." And for me, am I perfect? Do I always have perfect discipline? No, of course not. But over time, I just want to keep working towards that goal that I want, that I've said is most important. And, you know, my belief is like along the way, I'm eventually going to get there. But if I don't, I at least know that I'm going to have gone after something that was really, really meaningful for me.
Well, you just said what comes next. So, what comes next here in June, I believe, is the release of your first book titled Worthy Wins. And one of the things that, I read your some of your newsletter, and there was a, little story you have in there about a fight and is it a first grade basketball game? I think
First
it
grade.
was.
Yep.
Yeah,
First
first
grade
grade basketball.
basketball.
And the kind of beginning of this process for me of getting this podcast going is I was sitting in a coaches meeting for 3rd through 8th grade football coaches about over a year ago now, and I heard a story about a person who was doing the yard distance marker for the football game in a 3rd grade, a parent turning it into a javelin and throwing it at an official, right? And the fallout from what happened there it's pretty remarkable, and the way that the league handled it was great. But the idea that there is some learning to be done for parents, coaches, kids in this journey, and your book, give me a little flavor of what it's going to be about, and I'd love to hear the process that you've gone through of writing it and where people can the whole thing. Give me the whole thing.
Yeah,
Don't
love it, man.
give me the whole book, but just give me your thought process. What are you trying to accomplish with this?
Well, chapter 1, no, I will not give you a chapter by chapter journey, but the book was really born out of my desire to take my unique perspective, both my personal life and my business life, from working at Nike, and ultimately share what I've learned along my journey with friends. And so it started as a newsletter. It started as me writing a weekly newsletter to friends, exploring the idea of what does it mean to really win in the places that matter most? Like, what does that actually mean? Because for me, when I started writing, this is after my dad died, my mom was dead, my dad was dead. I had moved across the country and left, a great job that I hadn't not at that point, but I was clearly on a path to leave a great job. And I felt like I had a unique perspective about winning and what success really looks like. And so ultimately, like, the book is called Worthy Wins. It sort of indicates that not every success is actually worthwhile. It's not actually that important. And that's born out of this thing that I learned at Nike. So the most important thing I learned in my whole 10 years at Nike was that winning is subjective. And because winning is subjective, that means the only way to truly win is to get extremely clear about what success looks like. And what I found in my personal journey, my own ways, many times, is that I think there's a risk that every single person and every single organization faces. And the risk is that we will actually get to the end of a season, a career, a life, and say we wanted things that didn't actually matter.
Hmm.
And the worthy wins are the wins that will actually have been worth it at the end of our life. And so the book is about my journey of losing in places that did matter. So it's, like the time that I forgot to get my wife a Christmas present because I was so focused
That's a
on
loss.
my
Yeah, that's a
yes,
loss.
yes, but I won at work. The project was amazing, but I forgot to get her a meaningful Christmas gift until it was too late, and then it was too
Yeah,
late.
yeah.
And it's so easy for any of us to, like, get focused on lots of things, whether that's our work, whether that's social media likes and attention or money or whatever. And yet I think the thing that we all have the opportunity to do, and why this goes back to the story you're telling about youth sports, is like what I ultimately believe is that the starting point of winning is getting extremely clear about what it means to win. And whether that's a first grade basketball game where, in that case, what would have been really helpful in the story I was telling was if the leaders of the league and the coaches in the league had extreme alignment about what would make for a successful year. And what showed up in this game was that there wasn't alignment. There were coaches from one of the teams who thought that the success of that season would be about their team scoring the most points, their kids scoring the most points. And that wasn't the goal of the league. The goal of the league was to help all the kids learn and grow. And so stealing should not be allowed in that league. But there was not alignment about that. And so it comes down to that level. If everybody was super clear about what success looked like, then we wouldn't have had this fight
Yeah.
in the first grade basketball game. In the same way, I go back to tell you about me sitting in the seat where I was when Kobe passed away. So Kobe passes away immediately at Nike. Everybody's like, "Hey, we got to figure out how we're going to celebrate his legacy." And so what does that mean? That means that everybody in the company, many with much bigger titles than me, had an opinion about what we should do. We should do this. We should do this. Oh, let's do this thing. Let's do this thing. All this. Everybody had an opinion. And it was like the perfect moment of this all come together of realizing if we don't have alignment across all these people about what it objectively means to win, then we're going to have people going in a bunch of different directions and it's going to be disconnected and we're not going to win. And so as we worked through the process, we finally landed on driving extreme alignment around how we were going to celebrate Kobe's legacy. And the way that we were going to do that was we said the objective of this work is to pass Mamba mentality onto the next generation of athletes, starting with Gen Z girls. So if your idea for how we're going to celebrate Kobe's legacy does not do that, we're not doing that. If your idea passes Mamba mentality onto the next generation of athletes, starting with Gen Z girls, have at it. Go crazy. Do your best. Unleash all that creativity. And so the book is really about an encouragement for people to get really clear about what it means for them in their life or their organization, and then start to take the strategic steps to go after it and win in those areas. And that's really me taking what I learned about how you build a winning plan, how you build a meaningful story, and combining those two things. Because ultimately what I think, in order to truly win in our lives, to end our life and say, hey, I won where it's worthy, you want to have a meaningful story and you want to have a strategic plan for how to live it out. And that's really what the book is about. It's about my journey of learning those things at Nike and through my own life and helping give people really simple ways to apply them to their own life. Because the last thing we need is some crazy, super deep plan. I feel like we're all just trying to survive and do the best we can. And we need simple ways to go after the things that matter most. And that's what the book's about.
I can't wait to read it. That getting very clear about what is important, whether winning or what's the process, what are you trying to achieve, right? That is such a valuable lesson for everybody, and I'm grateful that you're taking what your experiences are and putting that into I'm assuming a very clear package for people to to understand. Where can people? When does it come out, and where can people find it?
Appreciate it. So it launches officially on June 10th. It'll be available for pre-order on Amazon. You can sign up for my newsletter at worthywins.co, and you can find my website at john-olinger.com. So JOHN-OLINGER.com. And either of those places will get you there.
I hope everybody goes out and gets it. It's the ability to take those little processes, and I think learning how to do that as a parent with a young athlete about every year of kind of reevaluating what is the next step in that process, what is winning going to be like for a third, fourth, fifth grader as a parent. I think it's critical part of the process of doing it. I don't want to say the right way, but in a way that maintains that relationship between the young person and their parents, right? Like that, those relationships can be very damaged if mom, dad have a clear path about what this looks like for my son, who's going to be the next LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, and the kid just wants to go play, right? They just want to go shoot baskets. Like I just want to go run around the track. Whatever it is you're doing, having that conversation and learning how to have those conversations is critical.
Yeah, agreed, man. It's and every kid, every relationship is different, and trying to find ways to communicate about that, is so important. And so I'm totally with you, man.
Well, I've really enjoyed this. I could literally talk to you for hours. But the getting close to the end of our time here, and I do this with everybody. So when I was coaching, we would have our players write a paper for us that was talked about, building a crystal ball for their future. What do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that they could set themselves up for a life that they wanted to do, something that they loved and they were passionate about. What I ask my guests to do is to go backwards and build a reverse crystal ball. Go talk to 14-year-old John Olinger, who's got 120 pounds soaking wet and looks like he's riding a chicken when he walks into the gym. What is the advice that you would give yourself?
Man, it's easy to say now, but I would say keep keep giving yourself a chance. Like as long as you're still working, as long as you're still putting in the time, you give yourself a chance. And I look back upon that time, and I did a lot of that on my own, but at times I probably leaned into some of the doubts and things other people had to say. But I would tell myself or any other 14-year-old kid, just keep doing the work. Just keep giving yourself a chance for the things you love, and don't worry about exactly what's going to happen 5 years from now. If you just take one step after another in that direction, you're going to end up in a really good place.
It's such great advice too. And the caveat, and it's not really a caveat, it's not the right word, but at the end of that, give yourself a chance to keep working at the things you love, right? Figuring out what that is, and then giving yourself the freedom to continue to work at what it is that you love. Don't let somebody else impact you, say you can't do it. Go find what you love and get as good as you possibly can at it.
Yeah. Agreed, man.
Yeah. All right. Last thing today, you got to tell me a dad joke. So I'm a big dad joke guy. I've got a book full of them. My kids hate every single one that I tell them. However, they tell me as many as they possibly can. So we got a nice tradition going here. So give me your best dad joke, John.
Well, I think it's imperative then, I would say, what's the best way to save your dad jokes?
What is the best way to save your dad jokes? I don't know.
A database.
I've never heard that one. It's fast. That is fantastic.
It sounds like you need it, man.
That's awesome. Well, I do have a database. It's called a book. It's a hardcover book. People don't know that much about anymore. All right, man. Well, again, I thank you so much for coming on the show. You can find John at all the places that he told us about. Book comes out in June. And I recommend everybody go out and check it out. And in the meantime, go sign up for his newsletter. It is really good reading, and some humor along the way, as well as some great insight. But thanks again for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks, Anthony. Great seeing you, man.
All right, man. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Hi, Anthony Leveritz, host of the Next Pitch podcast, back here to recap my conversation with John Olinger. What an amazing man he is. I really enjoyed chatting with him. Could literally talk to him for hours. Opportunity to know John since he was a young kid, and recruited him on, even though he didn't come play for me. I still love the guy, and he's really remarkable. And I think, diving into, what we talked about today, hitting on that fact that you foster things with your kids that they love. And I've told people, my whole adult life, when asked, what's your advice about education, with what kind of jobs, and when you're pursuing a career. And I really believe, and John and I touched on this, find something that you love, get really, really good at it, and then get somebody to pay you to do it. And you're never going to work a day in your life. And figuring out what it is that your kids love to do, whether that's sports, whether that's art, it doesn't matter what it is, fostering that, giving them opportunity to do that, and watch them grow in that, whatever that discipline is that they're working on. If you can help them find something they love, you're going to be in a great space with them as their parent. And then, I was really fortunate to talk to somebody like John, who had the opportunity to do a bunch of different things while he was at Nike. But, we dove into his time working with the Kobe brand. And the thing that he said that really resonated with me is patience. You want to be urgent about what you're trying to do, but having a patience to know that there's a process that includes a lot of hard work. And sometimes opportunity is wrapped up in an ugly package that looks like hard work and not very much fun to get where you want to go, and a journey and a grind. And what John learned from his time with Kobe, and I really think he's put this into his own life, is work really hard, but also have the patience with yourself in the process to make sure you give yourself the time for that hard work to pay off. And it's not always the same payoff at the same time for every person. Every person matures differently in their process as an athlete, as a person, and in their careers. Really give yourself that hard work ethic, really work at developing that, but being patient with the results. I thought that was a really, really brilliant concept that Kobe had talked to John about and that John took from him. And then obviously John getting ready to launch his new book, Worthy Wins. You can find it just about anywhere. I think there is an opportunity there to really learn from his experience, and great that somebody like him has taken that experience. And just to summarize what I think you'll hear from the book is getting very clear, both as a person, maybe as a team, as an organization, whatever you're a part of, but for yourself and then for your organization, what is winning, and making sure that everything either you do personally aligns with that. What does winning really look like? And then second, as an organization, what is a win for us? What is a subjective win for us? And making sure that everybody is aligned to that process, or you're not going to be able to have the kinds of wins that you want to have. And in sports, and especially at the collegiate and professional level, there's a W and an L at the end of the night. In most everything else, there's not a specific win or loss. So defining what really matters to your organization, to you as a person, that what is that winning to you? What are those worthy wins? I can't wait to read the book, and I think it's a brilliant concept. Again, thanks to John for coming on the show. If you're listening, please follow us, Next Pitch Podcast. Follow us and like us, share us with your network. If you enjoy what we're doing, you can find us on any platform that has podcast. And until next time, have a great day.